Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross, on the 17th of August. And now, just before we start the programme, I'll introduce you to our two guests who probably need no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. First, sitting on my right here tonight is Sam Paton. Welcome back, Sam. Sam's famous for the Save Loch Lomond campaign.
I wouldn't say famous, Gordon. I would probably say infamous, but thanks for having me back this evening.
Okay, Sam, welcome back. And sitting on the other side of the studio this evening, Chris McCusker from the SNP Socialist Group. Welcome back to you, Chris.
Evening, Gordon. How are we?
We're fine. I'm hearing you loud and clear. Anyway, on with the show. So, tonight's coronavirus update, first of all. And as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 428,128 people in Scotland have now been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres. And of these, 408,770 were confirmed negative. 19,358 were positive. There are now 26 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. There are 0 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive today. This will be an underestimate of the number of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all of those with symptoms will be tested. Of the people who have tested positive, 248 were in hospital last night, 3 of whom were in intensive care. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection remains at 2,491. This number only includes those who have died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures available show that 41,369 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 3 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. Now, just to remind you tonight to tune in on Twitter if you want to take part in the programme. You will see details up on your screen on how to get in touch with us. But now on to our first story this evening. The UK government has been forced into a U-turn over exam results. The SNP has slammed the Tories for rank hypocrisy over this year's exam results, after the UK government was forced into U-turning on their decision by qualifications watchdog Ofqual. In Scotland, the Education Secretary, John Swinney, instructed the SQA to award pupils their predicted grades, after admitting the moderation mechanism in place was the wrong thing to do. Today it was confirmed that Ofqual would now award predicted grades to pupils in England after the UK government failed to take ownership of the issue. Despite calling for resignations in Holyrood, the Scottish Tories have been completely silent on calling for their UK bosses to be sacked. Commenting, the SNP MSP George Adams said, "Labour and the Tories are guilty of rank hypocrisy on this issue, and voters will see them as the opportunists that they are." The silence from Douglas Ross and Richard Leonard, meanwhile, is deafening. The SNP education spokesperson, Carol Monaghan, MP, said the decision for the UK government to follow Scotland's lead in addressing the wrongs of this year's exam results is welcome. It's now for the Secretary of State to reflect on his ill-advised comments and to work with devolved governments rather than briefing against them. Now, let's see. Sam, what's your response to this? Now that we've got the British government copying what the Scottish government has already done, it seems.
Yeah, it seems to be happening quite a lot lately, doesn't it, Gordon? It just goes to show you that Scotland is kind of leading the way in common sense and, and being sensible and adult. The UK government is very much still playing the childish politics and games and political points going. At the end of the day, these, as we have said, even regarding what happened up here in Scotland, this is kids' lives, it's kids' futures, and they have been dealing with a situation that nobody else in any generation can remember regarding their exams, and they deserve to get the results that they should have been rewarded. It doesn't matter whether they sat an actual exam or it's coming from their prelims or their coursework. At the end of the day, they've been working hard, during lockdown, and they deserve it, and that's got to be commended by the young people, whether it's in Scotland, England, Ireland or Wales, anywhere in the country, it's got to be commended. These kids are dealing with something nobody's ever dealt with before. So they deserve to get these results, and they deserve to be able to celebrate these results. And having politicians undermining the achievements is absolutely disgusting. And as far as I'm concerned, these politicians need to go and have a good look at themselves.
Okay, Sam, thanks for that. Chris, if I could bring you in at this point. Now, Sam had said previously in a show recently that she felt the problem was that young people were just simply not being listened to, that governments weren't paying any attention, and some of them actually had, as you pointed out yourself, Chris, had to go and demonstrate to get their attention. It now seems that this kind of thing is rubbing off in England, it seems.
Well, it is, and as laudable as it is for young people to be active in being activists, they shouldn't have to, because what we've got here is the fact, and it's not just the fact that England have done, in inverted commas, full Scottish, if I can plug the Sunday show. But they've also followed the example of Northern Ireland as well, and England being the last to actually take action on this. It just shows the rank hypocrisy within the party, and it also shows a bloody mindedness not to do what obviously works. Throughout life, you'll know this as well as I do, Gordon, that you learn by your mistakes. And if you see someone else making the mistake, well, you damn make sure that you don't make the same mistake. So, them turning around and not acknowledging the fact that England have had to do a U-turn, as again, it actually vindicates what I said last week. The vote of no confidence on John Swinney was nothing but sheer grievance for grievance purposes. There was no, they couldn't accept the fact that that there is full transparency within the Scottish government. And in the Scottish leadership, and they quite rightly held their hands up when they said that they got it wrong, and they rectified it. And now that the English government are being forced to do the exact same thing, they haven't even got the common decency to say England have done the right thing. Yeah. And we called for John Swinney's head. Now we should be calling for Gavin Williamson's. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. Can I ask you, Chris, do you think this marks the start? Chris, do you think this marks the start of the Scottish government now acting more as though they were the government of an independent country? In other words, just doing what is best for Scotland and ignoring whatever might be happening in England?
Well, I've actually got to take issue with that, Gordon. I'm surprised you said that, because I think that is the ethos. Every day when Nicola Sturgeon walks into Holyrood, we do things, properly, and we don't always get it right. But at the end of the day, everything is done with Scotland's best interests at heart. Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, thank you, Chris, and also Sam. Now, moving on to our second story this evening, and this involves Alexander Lukashenko. Lukashenko is facing more protests. Alexander Lukashenko's grip on power in Belarus took a further hit today as workers heckled him during a visit to a factory on the outskirts of Minsk. The visit to the state-owned MZKT military vehicles factory was meant to show that the Belarusian president was still in control and retained support of workers at the vast factories that are the backbone of the country's neo-Soviet economy, a day after the biggest rally in the country's recent history against his rule. Instead, leaked video and audio from his speech to selected workers at the factory showed him being heckled with shouts of "resign." Lukashenko looked shaken and carried on speaking as people screamed "liar." The embattled president arrived at the factory by helicopter, presumably due to safety concerns. Lukashenko, who has ruled the country for 27 years, has suggested the protests against him were organised and funded by shadowy foreign forces, and has asked Russian President Vladimir Putin to intervene. The Kremlin has said that Moscow is ready to provide help in accordance with a collective military pact if necessary, but Putin has stopped short of offering support or endorsement of Lukashenko, whose Griplin pair looks shakier by the day. The protests flared in the aftermath of the contested presidential election last Sunday, in which Lukashenko declared victory and then launched a violent police crackdown against protesters that saw more than 6,700 arrests and widespread reports of violence and torture by riot police. In a statement today, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the opposition leader in exile, said that she was ready to become the country's national leader, claiming victory in last week's presidential elections and calling on the people to come over to the side of the people. Tikhanovskaya left Belarus for Lithuania last week under pressure. Her husband still remains in jail in Belarus. Officially, she only won 10% of the vote to Lukashenko's 80%. But few people in Belarus or beyond believe that the vote was even close to being fair. Okay, Sam, let's hear what you think of this. The Belarusian president is now meeting strikes and protests, and he's being heckled at factory speech, where you would have expected him to hold forth. It was obviously set up in advance.
Basically, the end of the day, it's going to get worse, isn't it? He's going to be getting heckled more. People are angry, they're disappointed. The fact that, they believe that the election has been rigged. So therefore, this is going to keep on going. It's going to keep on happening until, and you just hope it's not going to escalate into more violence or anything like that over there. The end of the day, this is the kind of actions of a man who's losing control and grip of power, and this is when things can get quite serious. When somebody believes that they've got a right to power and control, they get desperate. And this is where the international community is going to have to step in and maybe mediate the situation, because he's such an arrogant man that he's not going to be willing to do it on his own. So it's going to be kind of wait and see what happens, isn't it?
Okay, Sam, thank you for that. Chris, if I could come to you next. Now, Lukashenko seems to be trying to involve Vladimir Putin in this, but how much do you think the Russian president is willing, how far do you think he's willing to go in terms of supporting Lukashenko, who's beginning to look more and more like a lame duck almost? He's under siege almost.
Yeah, I think Putin will go. Putin's a very smooth operator, and he won't risk his neck, or should I say, he wouldn't risk his political neck, on a smaller despot than what he is, because he can see obviously the bigger picture, But with respect to Lukashenko, he is the similarities between Lukashenko and Boris Johnson are actually really, really quite frightening when you think of it. Is that the vast majority of the country don't believe in the government of the day, and yet they are getting away with bloody murder. And literally, you see failings and gaffes coming out of Westminster, no matter what the public say, the government tend not to give a stuff and do it anyway. And this has been replicated in Minsk, and it is going to take a groundswell of the working class to actually, again, I don't want to use the word rise up, but I can't find another
Chris
superlative, but that is what they're going to have to do. And as I said on the show last week, it might take something of, the likes of the Solidarność movement to be replicated in order to see a bit of radical change.
Well, certainly the general strike that was called seems to be really having that effect. It's not often that the military factories would have a strike or have anybody heckle the leader when he comes to visit. It's very unusual, isn't it?
Well, it's not just military factories as well. Do you know what I mean? The whole Belarusian economy is actually teetering on the brink, and you add that in along with COVID. Of which we never hear anything about. The only time we hear about COVID is when Putin says that he's, tested a brand new drug, tried it on his brain, and she's leading a life of religious fulfillment. But once Lukashenko actually accepts the fact that the referendum needs to get run again. He famously
the election,
said
you mean,
that,
Chris?
He famously said that he would never have it unless he was actually killed. Well, I don't think that's exactly what it's going to take. But you're now getting even the newspapers in Belarus are actually starting to ask pertinent questions about why they're.
Chris, I think it's important to remember also that the state-controlled television service went on strike. Now, that surely has to be very unusual for the media, which is usually, broadcasting only what's approved. Have gone on strike as well. He's losing control of the media.
Well, that's what I was going on to say, Gordon, because when you have suppression of news reporting. I mean, can you imagine that happening with the BBC? Can you imagine the BBC going on strike and saying, the government are not letting us, report the news properly? There'd be a mass outcry.
Well, I guess not as long as the government officials and Tories are placed in high positions of power within the BBC. I guess not.
Well, no, but by that same token, there are many people within the news agencies within Russia and Belarus who are obviously paid to push the propaganda of the government, and that's the exact same thing that happens down in London. The Tories pay the BBC in order to push their propaganda. I look back to the last time there was a Labour government. I don't seem to remember the Sun and the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror all, lauding the fact that we had a Labour government. Do you know what I mean? So, that is what despots do. They control the media in order to control the masses.
Yeah. Well, okay, Chris, I think we'll draw the line under that story there and move it. And we're going to head to the UK now and look at household finances. UK household finances are set to worsen in August. The financial health of British households deteriorated in August at a faster pace than last month, in an uncompromising sign that the economic recovery from COVID-19 pandemic, a survey has shown. The Household Finance Index from data company IHS Markit fell to 40.8 in August from 41.5 in July, dragged down by the biggest drop in job security since 2011. A wave of layoffs is already underway, and it seems likely that worse will come when the government's furlough scheme closes at the end of October. Although economic output collapsed by a historic 20% in the second quarter of 2020, the official unemployment rate has not risen from its pre-pandemic level of 3.9% due to the furlough scheme, as well as the quirks in the joblessness definition. Tax data suggests businesses have shed more than 700,000 staff since the start of lockdown. Earlier this month, Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said the central bank's projection for an unemployment rate of 7.5% at the end of this year was a very bad story for the British public, and has warned that it could turn out worse than that. Sam, let's have your response to this. The Bank of England's head is actually warning that the unemployment rate is going to be Well, very bad story, he said. Surely this is looking extremely bad for the British government at the moment. They've always prided themselves on the fact that employment has been at an unparalleled high. Now we're hearing from the Bank of England that the opposite is about to occur.
Well, the thing is, with unemployment figures, it depends who does the figures and how they work out the figures to whether the unemployment level is high or low. The end of the day, that wee rhyme about Sherlock comes into my head, about unemployment going up, and unfortunately that's what's going to happen, and it is happening. There's so many, everybody at the moment is hearing of people being laid off, about to be laid off, or, being sacked, or, from the start of lockdown to right up until today, it's happening right across the board, and there is no job security.
Yeah.
I think we would be
Sam, can I just ask you, Sam, do you think that that with the furlough scheme sort of winding down and with it dropping from 80%, I believe it drops to 70% in the second part of it, have you noticed a drop yourself in your own household income, or do you know people who've experienced that?
Everybody. It's not even a drop in your household income, but the cost of food is rising, the cost of living is rising. If you go to the shops to buy, just the basic essentials, the cost has gone up. It's affecting everybody. So, I'm self-employed, so it's a bit different for me. I'm not relying on the furlough scheme, or just like yourself, Gordon. So, but it's affecting everybody right across the board right now, and it is going to get. I'm preparing for the worst case scenario, that it is going to get worse, and we are going to not so much. The economics are going to be really tough going, because if people don't have money in their pocket and they're not confident in spending that money, because they're not sure if they're going to have a job next week or next month, then businesses are going to start laying more people off, and they are going to start planning for the spending going down, and the UK government need to be doing a lot more to secure these jobs, and putting the furlough scheme down to 70% is not going to help, because there's a lot of businesses out there who cannot sustain that in any shape or form, so they will start paying off staff. And it's okay people saying, but they can't lay people off or make people redundant during furlough, but it's happening. It's a lot of big companies that are doing it. So the furlough's not actually protecting people's jobs. It's just in a way, giving businesses a chance to get out of contracts and rewrite people's contracts. It's just absolutely. I don't know what the answer is. We could turn around and say universal payment, basic income. We could say
UBI,
Yeah, so there's so many different things that we can say, but unless the UK government's actually willing to listen to people, nothing's going to happen. As far as they're concerned, as long as they're okay and their friends are okay, they don't give a toss about the rest of us on the bottom. And what happens, but things are getting tough, and you hear people talking about it all the time. The pressures are on with families at the moment, and it is going to get tougher.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Chris, I read somewhere in the Grocer magazine that food retailers are expecting prices to rise sharply when we finally finish with the Brexit transition period. How do you... Oh, okay. I beg your pardon, Chris. We've got a wee problem with Chris's sound. Sam, let me come back to you for a moment. I was just going to say to Chris, with food prices expected to rise due to Brexit at the end of this year, Sam, how is that going to affect families already on reduced incomes?
Yeah, sorry that you're back to me again. But yeah, it is. And we've been saying this even before COVID, that, prices were going to rise due to the Brexit, and then put COVID on top of this. It's the perfect storm. We've discussed this so many times on the programme. How people are going to cope, I really don't know. But what's very apparent is the UK government have got no plans for any of this at all. And the thing is, we're coming up to winter, so people are going to be struggling in terms of buying food and the rising costs of grocery shopping, but also you're going to have the increase of fuel as the kind of winter starts to draw in. So people are going to be struggling with that as well, and and not sure if they've got any job security. So it's.
Sam, can I ask you, why do you think the Conservative government decided to, first of all, pitch the furlough scheme at 80% and then reduce it? What do you think they were trying to achieve with that?
Oh, crikey, I wish I had a crystal ball right now, Gordon.
Do you think it was mostly to force people back into work, Sam?
I think it was. And I think also as well, to do the furlough scheme at the beginning, they had to be seen to be helping and being a nice sort of government and protecting the workers. But yeah, to reduce it, it's a way of, I believe, it's forcing people back to work. It's because if you noticed, when we were in furlough and in lockdown, the amount of big companies that were putting pressure on to get everything opened back up. So it's basically a way of forcing people back to work when really the country's not kind of ready yet to go full back. Because COVID is still there. There's still clusters happening. And it's putting people in a position. What do they do? Do they risk their health, or do they have to pay the bills? And but the UK government doesn't have the responsibility of making that decision now. And it's them. Basically, they're running away from the responsibility of protecting the people of the United Kingdom.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sam. Chris, I think we can now cross to Chris. Hopefully you're hearing us all right, Chris. I was just going to say to you, having spoken to Sam there, the Tory party seems to be using its well-tried and tested ideal or its ideology that they don't want to make not working pay. So this is another way of getting people back to work, reduce the furlough and then end it to force people back to work. Would you agree with that assessment? You think that's what they're doing?
Well, I'm sorry, I completely missed everything that Sam said, obviously. It would appear to me that, that would be one of the reasons why they don't want to embrace a UBI, because they, you and I remember the days of the Thatcher, the milk snatcher, who basically perpetuated the myth to the media that everybody that was on the dole were lazy and just lazy, feckless, just wanted
basically labelling people unemployed as scroungers.
Yeah. But I mean, basically pigeonholing people. And honestly, speaking from my own perspective, I've never because maybe again it's in my ethos that was taught by my father, was that if you wanted something, you had to earn it in order to attain it. Whereas the
old work ethic, Chris.
Well, but the poverty benefits that exist in Britain today, are in no way, shape, or form could possibly keep anybody in the life of comfort. And the benefits today, from the benefits of back in the late 70s, early 80s, has not moved with the times. It has not exponentially rose with growth and inflation and all the rest of it. So from that point of view, the Tories are talking complete mince. We see various incentives thrown down, in order to get people into work, which is fine, fair and play. But they forget the fact that whilst they demonise people who cannot get work, because they have got disability issues, because they've got child-minding issues, they've got various issues. These are not taken into consideration, and people are actually hounded to apply for 12, 15 jobs a week. Quite simply, when there's about 300 people chasing the one vacancy, it's Chris, out with the realms of possibility that you would actually get that job.
I was going to say, based on what you've just saying, Chris, and I know that you are a union official yourself in your day job, what do you anticipate will happen when the furlough scheme ends at the end of October? What will all those workers do? I mean, how many of them do you think will go back to full-time jobs, and how many might have to reapply for their jobs at a lower rate?
Well, it's been well documented what Willie Walsh is doing at BA. Where he wants to actually pay people off who are on a fairly decent hourly rate, through their service, and basically he wants to pay them off and force them to reapply for their job. It's not like that they have transferable skills into another airline, because the issue with airlines is a global issue. It's not just a British issue. It's happening to Qatar, it's happening to Emirates, it's happening to Qantas, it's happening to Lufthansa.
So it's a global issue, Chris. I mean, how is that going to affect the global economy if millions of workers from the aviation industry are laid off?
Yeah, so what they have to do is look at the bigger picture, and actually, it is wrong, and in many stages it's completely illegal to actually make someone redundant and then ask them, to basically reapply for their job, because they know that there's nothing else out there for them.
Yeah.
You're getting to see it even in the hotels around the airports, the hotels in the city centre, because the trade's not there.
Because all the industries depend on one another, Chris, yeah?
Yeah, correct. So they are going to pay people off, and then when it comes round to rehiring people, you'll find that these unscrupulous companies will, definitely
Chris?
revise their terms and conditions in order to bring them on at a cheaper wage.
Okay, Chris, listen, thank you for that. We're going to move on now to our next story. Now we're going to the United States, where the virtual Democratic Convention has begun. The Democratic National Convention begins this evening with a star-studded lineup and heavy emphasis on unity, aimed at presenting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the best hope for healing the deeply divided nation, reckoning with the parallel crises of global pandemic and racial injustice. The party's 4-day presidential nomination convention has been entirely reshaped by the public health crisis. Originally planned for Milwaukee, Wisconsin in mid-July, it has been forced into a compacted virtual affair renamed the Convention Across America. The event, which usually draws thousands of party faithful to a single city for days of celebrating, deal-making and politicking, will now take place from remote locations across the United States. Biden is scheduled to formally accept the Democratic presidential nomination on Thursday, delivering the most consequential speech of his decades-long career from a mostly empty ballroom near his home in Wilmington, Delaware. Meanwhile, concern is growing that Trump will make voting as difficult as possible during the pandemic, and should he lose the vote, he won't accept its outcome. Democrats have accused President Donald Trump of trying to hamstring the cash-strapped postal service to suppress mail-in voting. Yesterday, the US House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, said that she is recalling the chamber later this week to vote on legislation to protect the Postal Service. A senior Democratic aide said the likely plan is for the House to return on Saturday. Pelosi said the House would vote on legislation to prohibit the Postal Service from implementing any changes to services it had in place on January the 1st, 2020. Sam, if I could come to you first of all on this story. It seems that the battle is shaping up across the pond now between Joe Biden and President Trump, with Mr. Trump appearing to try to slow down the process of voting by threatening to make changes to the Postal Service, almost taking a page out of the playbook of Mr. Lukashenko.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that when you were reading the story there, arrogant and controlling and power grabbing all came to mind, as it did with Lukashenko. It just goes to show you once again what happens when someone gets desperate and they're about to lose power. They start to basically set things in motions so they don't need to accept the outcome. And, we all know that Trump is very much a control freak. It's going to be very difficult over in America to do these elections, especially with COVID. But Trump is not exactly a leader, and he is not exactly being a leader by leading this and making sure the democratic process goes ahead. Instead, he's trying to stop the democratic process, and basically he's behaving like a tyrant. This is. We all said this was going to happen. He was going to
Going to be a bad loser, Sam.
He's just sent me a message because I get Lucas. I can't say Lukashenko, and he's just sent me a message.
It's all right. I can't say the name of his opponent either.
I caught my eye there because he's going, who's he? Because I couldn't pronounce it. So it's very much one of those ones where that. He's just been a tyrant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's up to the lawmakers over in America to make sure that he doesn't get away with this. And but we knew this was going to happen. I think we've mentioned this a few times on the show before. About Trump using COVID as the perfect excuse, for the up and coming election. So it'll be interesting to see how it's going to go.
All right, Sam. Thank you, Chris. Donald Trump doing his usual of trying to undermine the method of voting this time. He's undermined the credibility of the media before now. Now he seems to be undermining the security of the American Postal Service in an effort to delay the inevitable.
Well, I mean, and Sam's actually quite right. The parallels that you can draw between Putin, was it Lukashenko?
We'll have a laugh at this afterwards, Chris.
Boris Johnson and Trump, they are peas in a pod. The similarities are stark, and incredible. It's just untrue. I mean, honestly, if you were writing a movie, you couldn't write a better script. The fact is the fact that you wouldn't actually have to write the script because it's writing itself. You can see it, but and it's for despot people who are desperately trying to hold on to all the power, by any such means possible, and whether it's fiddling with the postal service or telling people to look over there, there's migrants coming in boats, or it is absolutely incredible. It's ludicrous, but that's what the far right do. Once they get power, they hold on to that power, like it's their last breath.
Do you think, Chris, the American electorate is smart enough now to have seen through Donald Trump and all his petulance and foot stamping?
Unfortunately, no, I don't think so, Gordon, because there are I've got some lovely, lovely American friends and all the rest of it. and I don't want to offend anybody, who is American, but, dear Lord, when you see some of them turning around saying, I don't wear any underwear because things have got to breathe, and that's why I don't wear a mask, and then you've got people turning around and, they're basically, still living in Hillbilly City back in the 1700s, where they're running about with their rebel flags and stuff like that. And it's honestly, it's absolutely ludicrous. It really is. It's absolutely ludicrous. And, things that you thought were going to effect better change under Obama, such as, the actual Obamacare. It was one of the first things that Trump wanted to get rid of, such as his deep hatred of anything that resembled socialism.
I think Donald Trump also tends to conflate socialism with communism, something which you hear a lot, actually, from commentators.
Well, actually, to be quite honest with you, Gordon, a lot of Americans do that, and it is a mantra that was born out during the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, where they actually demonised an awful lot of actors.
The McCarthy years
didn't get any work because they had socialist tendencies, and
so
they were
blacklisted.
And they were blacklisted. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, Chris, we're going to have to move on, I'm afraid, but we're going to COVID-19 again and Scotland's COVID-19 testing strategy. The testing approach adapts as prevalence changes. The Scottish Government has published its updated testing strategy, setting out the role testing continues to play in tackling the coronavirus COVID-19. The strategy focuses on a number of key areas of testing. The whole population testing of anyone with symptoms, test and protect. Proactive case finding by testing contacts and testing in outbreaks. Protecting the vulnerable and preventing outbreaks in high-risk settings by routine testing. Testing for direct patient care to diagnose and treat and to support safe patient care as NHS services restart. And also surveillance to understand the disease, to track prevalence, understand transmission and to monitor key sectors. A key development to strengthen surveillance work and to help prevent the spread of the virus will be for all contacts of COVID-19 index cases to be offered testing regardless of whether they have symptoms. At present, recent close contacts of those people with a positive test result are asked to isolate for 14 days. While they still have to do this, they will now also be advised to get a test, allowing for further contacts to be identified and potential wider outbreaks contained. In addition, from September, Scotland will participate in the ONS COVID-19 infection survey, which is currently operating in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. This represents the single biggest expansion to date of an asymptomatic testing for surveillance purposes in the pandemic. The survey will eventually see approximately 15,000 individuals in Scotland tested during every 2-week rolling period. This equates to approximately 9,000 households. Okay, now we're going to also continue into the next story and preparing for the return of sport and leisure facilities. Guidance has today been published outlining the steps necessary to enable indoor sport and leisure facilities to reopen, once ministers have agreed that they can do so. The guidance has been developed by the Scottish Government in collaboration with Sport Scotland and stakeholders within the sector. The Minister for Public Health, Sport and Wellbeing, Joe Fitzpatrick, said, "I know that many people across the country have greatly missed being able to use gyms, leisure centres and swimming pools, with all the health and well-being benefits of that those activities bring. The sector is feeling the financial impact of continued closures of those facilities too, and I appreciate that many people's livelihoods are at stake, despite the extensive financial support that the Scottish Government and UK Government have provided to businesses during the lockdown. This new guidance, created in collaboration with the sector, is an important step towards getting these facilities opened again in a way that is as safe as possible for staff and customers." Now, Sam, I'm going to come to you first. There's obviously there are two items on this little list for you to react to. First of all, the improved testing and tracing, a good thing, surely.
I'm just reading. I'm looking something up, Gordon, because I was looking into this about a week or so ago. With the ONS survey, please, MD, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm led to believe the company that's got the contract for that is an American research company working in situ with Oxford, and basically they've been given the contract for this to carry out these tests, and as I say, please correct me if I'm wrong. So I would want to know, why is an American research company involved in this?
Okay.
You know, so
we're just hearing that Scotland isn't using the American research companies themselves, according to our information. It's purely England and Wales only, apparently.
England and Wales only, right? Okay, right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that clarified.
No, that's fine, Sam.
That they but no, at the end of the day, we need to do as much testing and tracing and testing and protect as possible, because at the end of the day, that's the only way we're going to get on top of COVID. And one of the things that I would like to see happening with the schools reopening up is some sort of testing going on in the schools as well. You know, whether
that was announced last week, I think, Sam.
Well, I missed it, so that's good as well. So yeah, it's good. Yeah, they need to be doing some more testing, definitely. That's not going to do MD any harm. But I was just concerned about with the American research company. But if that's England and Wales, then we don't need to worry about that.
Okay. We're hearing, Sam, that this is all about the ONS in England and Wales, and the main story that we're going to cover tonight is the way that Scotland is approaching this. So I'd like to bring Chris into the conversation now. Chris, now obviously both of these stories concern the Scottish Government's approach to both opening up leisure facilities and continuing to widen out the test and trace. Is this, do you think, the sign of a more inclusive approach, Chris? Do you think they're widening this out even further?
Well, I think actually, if we go back to the beginning, I think we can remember that Nicola said that, these would be amongst the last sectors, to open. You have to take into account the trepidation that she is feeling with regards mass crowds and stuff like that. And that's down to whether you're playing five-a-side inside a gymnasium, people running about an actual workout gym and stuff like that. Where you're in a fairly compact area, although obviously individually working out on your own. But again, with the likes of swimming pools and saunas and jacuzzis and stuff like that, it's not about the space; it's more about the confines that you're actually, having to be in. So I think she's looking to take a slow and pragmatic step towards slowly unlocking the rest of the economy. And people should be under no illusions. We are not going back to what it used to be.
No,
Nothing is
can
going
we?
to be.
Chris, actually, this particular subject will feed directly into our next story, which I'm just about to. Now, as well as obviously going back and opening these facilities up, there needs to be other measures taken, and one of the measures obviously is wearing masks. There's been a great deal of debate about this, but apparently masks can block 99.9% of COVID-linked droplets. People who wear a face mask significantly lower the risk of spreading COVID-19 to others through speaking and coughing, new research suggests. Someone standing 2 meters from a coughing person who has no mask is exposed to 10,000 times 10,000 times more droplets than someone half a metre from a coughing person who is wearing one, the researchers have found. The findings, published in the non-peer-reviewed preprint server, could have implications for social distancing measures, the team says. Researchers at the University of Edinburgh compared the number of droplets that landed on the surface in front of a person coughing and speaking without and with a surgical mask or a basic cotton face covering. The analysis found that the number of droplets was more than 1,000 times lower when wearing even a single layer cotton mask. The results contrast with previous research that suggested that masks are less effective. However, these studies also measured small droplets known as aerosols, which can remain airborne for hours. It's still uncertain how much virus transmission occurs by aerosol. But if it is found to be significant, the team cautions that the new findings overestimate the protective effects of face coverings. Nevertheless, for bigger droplets carrying the largest amount of virus, masks are extremely effective in reducing the spread to immediate surroundings, researchers have said. Okay, let's first of all come to you, Sam. Are you surprised by these findings? I know there's been a lot of very negative comments on the media about masks. And this new research, it's saying it's in a non-peer-reviewed medium, but it is being conducted by the University of Edinburgh, so I think we can be fairly sure that they're fairly rigorous. What do you think? Would you expect these masks to be effective?
Yeah, well, the thing is wearing face masks or any form of facial covering is going to give you some sort of protection. Whether or not it gives you adequate protection is another thing, but it's going to give you some sort of protection. But when you were reading that there and you're talking about droplets and aerosols and things, you forget when you're speaking how much, I was going to say hot air or, fluid.
Well, I mean, I can quote one of the figures to you, Sam. The analysis found that the number of droplets was more than 1,000 times lower just wearing a single cotton mask, which is something that really surprised me.
Honestly, it's just, now the next time I'm standing next to someone, I'm going to be thinking, I'm going to be imagining droplets coming towards me.
And no coughing.
I know, no coughing. But no, it just goes to show you. I mean, I've been wearing a facial covering anyways since all this started, and so's my kids as well. And they've been very much encouraged to do so. But the thing is what we forget now, it's not even just COVID, but to take it a step further, when you're out and about, pollution and things like that, you're protecting yourself from inhaling pollution and things like that as well. So especially if you live in the city centre. So it'd be interesting to find out how much less people are inhaling in from exhaust fumes and things like that when, next to busy roads, if they're wearing facial coverings now. That would be interesting to find out. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not going to do any harm, is it, by wearing a facial covering? It's, if it gives that slight chance of just stopping COVID, then definitely,
Well, it certainly seems to reduce the risk 1,000-fold. Chris, I know, again, as a union man, you have a great deal of knowledge of things like health and safety law. What do you think of this? Does this surprise you that even a basic face covering, such as a single layer cotton mask, can reduce the droplet number by 1,000 times? It's quite remarkable, surely.
Well, I wouldn't have thought it was as much as that, but you learn something every day. What I'm more interested in, and exactly just what Sam said, is that if you go back 10 years or even 5 years, news pictures from China, Tokyo, even Japan, most of the countries, you actually seen people walking about those highly densely populated countries wearing face masks. And that's just down to the actual pollution that the chemical industries were putting in the air. It was down to the car emissions, as Sam said, the levels of carbon monoxide.
Sam,
and I'm actually thinking back now to when my father works with asphalt, and he actually he drew carbon off of the asphalt into his lungs, and was never issued with the correct PPE.
Chris, can I stop you just for a moment, Chris? I want to make an announcement to the public. Yep. Okay. Can anyone in the Crean Larrick area assist Leslie Riddoch, who apparently, any of our viewers out there, she has, according to, I can't say, apparently Leslie Riddoch is waiting for a breakdown truck. Yep. And she's had a breakdown, apparently a puncture, and is needing some help. So if anybody local in the area can get to Leslie, that would be a great help. You will find Leslie Riddoch talking about this on Twitter, and if you can help her in any way, I'm sure she would appreciate that. I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris, for that brief news flash there. We're going to go to a final story this evening, and this time it is a good news story. And the social security, hang on, I beg your pardon, we are here. Okay, a new benefit has been announced for young people starting work. The new benefit is to support 16 to 24-year-olds into work if they have been unemployed for 6 months. Will open for applications on Monday, the 17th of August. The Job Start payment is a one-off £250 payment to help with the cost of starting a new job. The upper age limit rises to 25 for care leavers, and the payment rises to £400 if the person has a child. In its first year, it is estimated that around 5,000 young people will benefit from this new financial support. The Social Security Secretary, Shirley Ann Somerville, said, "I'm delighted that our Job Start payment is today now open for applications. It really couldn't come at a better time to support our young people to take up job offers." Young people are, of course, among those whose job prospects have been hardest hit by this pandemic. As such, it's crucial that we support them and ensure that they are at the heart of our economic recovery from COVID-19. Last week, we announced an additional £10 million for a range of measures to recruit and retain apprentices. Combined with our commitment to at least £50 million for youth employment and Scotland's Youth Guarantee, we will ensure that no one is left behind. Building on this work to create opportunities, this new benefit will also help young people after a period of unemployment. Getting a job can represent a massive turning point for many young people, but it can also bring financial pressures. Costs like travel, new work clothes or childcare often have to be met before people get their first paycheck. The brand new Job Start payment will help young people with these costs, which can sometimes be a barrier to them taking up an offer, and we will be encouraging anyone eligible to apply. Now, Sam, I'm pretty certain I know what the answer to this is, but what is your reaction to this piece of good news?
Oh, crikey, that predictable. Yeah, it's good news. We go back to our younger days when we were first starting out in the big bad world, and it's going and buying your clothes for the interview, then going and buying clothes to start work, and then the travel costs and things. And a lot of jobs this day and age are monthly pay. Which adds on to the pressure as well, which is quite difficult. But I'm going to put the cat amongst the pigeons here and play devil's
Well, you'll need to
advocate.
be brief, Sam. I'm afraid we're running out of time.
Oh, are we? Am I talking too much? Basically, I would like to see that, rather than the 6 months unemployment reduced, because even people that are a month out of employment are finding financial difficulties to get back into work. There you go. That's my...
Okay. All right, Sam, thank you very much. And very briefly, Chris, your comment on the launch of this new package for young people?
Well, obviously, from a trade union point of view, it has to be welcomed. Again, you can see that it's the Scottish Government taking the practical and the pragmatic steps and actually thinking about the Scotland's newest workforce and giving them every financial incentive and every financial help in order to get into the employment market. And you know, honestly, it should be, you know, sung from the rooftops. This one, it's an absolute masterstroke. Well done, Leslie Ann.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Well, we're coming to the end of tonight's programme now, and as usual at this time in the evening, I'd just like to remind viewers that if you want to become a supporter of Broadcasting Scotland and help us to make more and better programmes, you can do so by following the instructions on your screen now. Go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register to become a supporter. That's it from this edition of Broadcasting Scotland, Scotland at 7. I'll be back again on Thursday. In the meantime, thank you to my two guests, Chris McCusker and Sam Paton, and we'll see you on the next programme. Bye for now. Hey.